I can help you grow your podcast. A phrase we podcast veterans in the industry see scroll by our Twitter feed on a nearly daily basis. And while the sound of 1,000 podcast producers rolling their eyes across the internet sounds like a wet sponge sliding down a wall, gross. Can you help me grow my podcast? Is a question that rings out even louder. Would-be famous podcasters are so exhausted from the research of best microphones, best audio editor, best podcast host, that the desire for a shortcut appears like an oasis on a journey through the searing, barren lands of the podcast landscape. If you'll indulge me, I'd like to refocus the conversation from a shortcut back to the content of our podcast through the lens of YouTube. No, not YouTube. When the heck are we going to get a proper podcast solution for our channel's YouTube? But YouTube creators who, like many podcasters, produce video for this very same topic to the very same audience. A few points before we take flight. Number one, I'm going to show you some clips from 3 different YouTube creators talking about the recently released Insta360 X3 camera. This is not a jab at their artwork, but to illustrate how each serves their audience with what they're publishing. It works for all 3, but you should be able to spot the difference across them. Number 2, the podcaster this lesson is aimed at might be you or your client. It's the podcaster that 90% of the time does the direct-to-tape podcast interview, maybe in the B2B or small business space, but needs a nudge to focus on the content or the edit of the content to really grow their show. And number 3, the irony is not lost on me that I'm making this video standing at my desk, not in my studio, much to the chagrin of today's lesson. Let's go. 3 different YouTubers reviewing the same product. One straps the camera to a handmade plane, which they fly to a desert. The other reads off a spec sheet and pulls B-roll from his backyard.
Completely invisible when you are shooting 360 video. It's genius.
Our bonus YouTuber, well, he at least got on a jet ski and climbed to the top of a roof.
Just not want the 360 capabilities and just get a 4K solid.
If you lined up all 3 of these videos and watched them side by side, who would win? Would it be the dry delivery of the technical specs mixed with a tutorial approach?
This new camera, which is releasing today, is different. It is simply called the Insta360 X3.
Actual hands-on footage with great camera work or sound
Where
design?
you hold it, if you just change the angle, if you just hold it behind you, if you hold it in front of you, low to the ground, it makes it.
Or the protagonist in a well-crafted story that grips the viewer/listener while pushing the boundaries so far out of reach from the competition?
Yeah, I can hardly breathe.
This was a really stupid idea. We've been here for all of 2 minutes and I'm burning.
The answer is, it depends. You might be producing a podcast that delivers high value of utility for your audience. You're informing them, educating them, and each week a listener tunes in to learn something. That's fantastic. The goal of your podcast might be lead gen or to stand out as an authority in your space. But if your goals change from lead gen to brand awareness, you need to start enhancing that content. No one is retweeting or liking the boring content. For example, spend more time on scripting and defining impactful segments for every episode. The more you invest, the more your audience will appreciate it. And if you're that podcaster or brand that wants to stand out from the competition, like really, have you looked at what the competition is doing and devised a plan to do it better? Some of the best B2B or branded podcasts rarely mention the brand and boring stats, the Wall Street-like speak. The well-told story, content that stands out in a crowded social world, and attention to the craft of audio is what will work. Look, I'm not saying you have to fly a plane to a remote location and survive unhealthy climates, but it is memorable. There's no one-size-fits-all approach to growing your podcast. It's the sum of all the tiny things coming together that make it a true force. At the end of the day, if you want to grow your podcast, start with your podcast.
The future of the action camera.
Now it's all about this.
Oh! No! Bro, what? You know what's glitching me out is that you built this thing.
You gotta remember, I flew this thing from South Africa. I was in